Greetings from Paranormal M, the channel where we delve deep into enigmatic tales. Whether you're about to go to sleep, procrastinating perhaps, or just looking for some scary stories, hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and also, if you could, leave a comment and help us with this algorithm. We hope you're ready for an adventure that'll leave you in awe. I don't fully believe in ghosts, but if anything is going to convince me, it's what happened to me earlier this year. Me and my family had plans to fly to Arizona, stay with my brother who we hadn't seen in a while. I stayed in a room downstairs while they stayed in the one upstairs. After a few days, they started complaining of weird noises in the room, but ended up catching a flight home earlier while I stayed. I ended up taking their room because it was bigger, and my first night in there was my last. It was nighttime. I was ready for bed. I had just laid down and I had my eyes closed. After about a minute of laying there, not even close to sleeping, I saw a large flash of light, like someone shined a flashlight on my eyelids, and the loudest bang I'd ever heard. It was so loud my ears started ringing. Scared shitless, I got up and ran downstairs to the living room, turned on all the lights including the TV, trying to figure out what had just happened. Not 3 minutes later, the house alarm starts blaring that the door to the garage open, door to the garage open. It's my best robot. That woke up my brother, who got up and turned off the alarm. We didn't find anything at all. Let's just say I didn't get a minute of sleep that night. The next day we met up with some friends for lunch, and I tell them the story of what happened. One of them asked me if I knew the story about the house before I bought it, or before he bought it. I said no, so they said there was a family living there before your brother bought it. The kid and the father had a big argument that led to the kid shooting his dad while he was asleep in bed. Shortly afterward, the kid ran to the garage and shot himself and committed suicide. That completely lined up with what I experienced the night before. If ghosts are real, that entire experience has me convinced. Friend had a doppelganger experience on Halloween. Thin veil? ? A friend called me today, November 1st, and he wanted to let me know what happened to him yesterday on Halloween. Thought it was a little spooky. My friend is in Colorado for a work assignment. He's been sick with a cold while being there. For context, we both live in Texas, and I currently live in Texas. On his way into a store yesterday to pick up some cold medicine, he claims to have seen me, or someone who looks just like me, walking by him, roughly 5 feet away. He pauses, shouts my name, and the doppelganger continues to walk on without acknowledging my friend. My friend then shouts an apology again with no acknowledgement. Sounds like a case of mistaken identity. A coincidence, maybe. My friend calls his wife later on just to tell her about what happened. She insists that he called to me too. Basically, make sure that I'm still alive. Her reasoning was that the veil is thin on Halloween. She basically told him that he has to call to make sure that I'm still alive. Well, I am still alive. My friend thinks that he must have just been mistaken or sick enough to hallucinate seeing me in Colorado. I shook him and his wife up, though. After hearing the story, I can't help but wonder about the possibility for something more exciting than mistaken identity. Especially if the doppelganger didn't even respond. Would a ghost or a hallucination be able to respond? I know this sounds weird, but I think I have a mimic. This morning I was getting my toddler dressed, and we heard someone talking out in the living room. My older son was in the kitchen and didn't hear it. My partner's at work, so we definitely shouldn't be hearing him talking. It wasn't my older son talking to himself because it sounded like a man's voice. My toddler got excited because he thought it might be his dad coming home from work. 2 weeks ago, I was laying in bed. My 2-year-old climbed into bed with me at 5:30. I told him to go in his bed so I could have a minute to wake up. His bed is next to mine. I was laying on my back when I saw him leave the room instead of going to his bed. I told him, "Don't leave the room." He went to his bed. A couple of minutes later, I saw him leave the room. He was wearing his robe and the door opened. I sat up and said, "Hey, get back here." When I looked over to his bed, he was still in his bed. I was so freaked out. I have a camera in my living room, but I wasn't subscribed to storage. It did pick up movement at both of the times that I saw my son leave the room. The day before this, there was movement in my older son's room. I was home alone and the cat was on my lap. She even reacted to it. My older son is 10 and says sometimes he's woken up at night to his toys in his room bin being jostled around. My boyfriend is seeing a black cat figure. It's none of my current alive cats. A month ago, my boyfriend was in our bed. He was awake when he saw a black cat walking across the hall. The cat was in front of the open door of the bedroom. None of my cats are black. He thought maybe a neighbor's cat got into the apartment, so he went looking for the black cat, but couldn't find it. That day, I decided later to put my sick cat to sleep. It was really painful, and it was really hard to make that choice. His name was Emilio. Emilio! That morning, Emilio was in the studio's closet, and my other 2 cats were in the living room. When my boyfriend saw the black cat, he interpreted it as an omen, like a confirmation that Emilio was going to die that day. He told me this days later. Yesterday, he told me he saw the black cat again. He was in bed again reading when he saw a black tail going underneath the bed. It wasn't a shadow. It was dense and completely black. He was trying to find the logic in that, so maybe it was Haku, my gray cat. He looked under the bed and no one was there. Haku was sleeping in the other bedroom. I asked him if maybe it was Emilio, my cat who passed away, but he said no, it didn't look like Emilio. Besides, the first time he saw it was when Emilio was still alive. So far, my 2 cats don't seem nervous or on alert when the apparitions had occurred. Had sleep paralysis and saw my partner in the end of the bed while dreaming, but it wasn't my partner. So a few days ago, I, a 24-year-old female, was supposed to go somewhere really early in the morning with my partner, but I decided to skip it and keep sleeping. I covered my face with a sheet because daylight didn't let me sleep well. So at some point while I was sleeping, I felt my partner come back and sit at the end of the bed while saying a word. Rather, without saying a word. Even though I had a sheet covering my face, it didn't cover it completely, so I was able to see the brief space, and I saw my partner's legs and my foot touching one of them. Her skin was cold. I felt happy for a second that she came back, but then I realized there was no way she could come back from her class so soon, and I realized that wasn't my partner. I tried to move and uncovered my face from the sheet, but I had sleep paralysis and couldn't move at all. I don't know how to explain it, but because I forgot part of that dream, we'll call it. But I knew that that person wasn't my partner, even though it looked like her. I tried to move, but I couldn't, and then I felt really horny. I knew that person was making me feel that way, and I couldn't do anything to stop it, wake up, or do pretty much anything. I don't remember the rest. I don't remember if it touched me or did something else. I just woke up to a huge urge to masturbate. Sorry, guys. That dream was very vivid and scared me a lot. When my girlfriend, a 25-year-old female, arrived, I told her about the dream, and she recommended me not to think about it because I was really scared. Somebody or something was inside my attic. This just happened, and I'm pretty shaken up by it all. But this evening, while putting away some clothes in my closet, I noticed the entry point to my attic had been disturbed and set ajar. I live in a condo with my wife and child. Our master bedroom has a walk-in closet with an access point or a lid or whatever you call it to our attic. I don't believe the attic connects with any of the other condos, but we do share walls with neighbors on both sides. As I was folding and putting away laundry this evening, my wife walked in from the connecting bathroom. Our master bedrooms and bathroom connect directly across the walk-in closet, so they face entryways, and went to ask me something when she gasped and said, "Look up." My blood turned cold immediately. There it was. The entry point drywall lid was lifted out of its place and set ajar. She had been giving our child a bath at that same time, basically right there, and I froze for a moment, not knowing what exactly to do or how to handle the situation. Got a hold of myself, dialed 911 while my wife and child went downstairs in a hurry. She got both of them ready while I stayed on guard, watching the entry to the attic crawl space. Police showed up after what felt like an eternity and checked up there, but couldn't find anything, no signs of forced entry, just an obviously lifted up and placed ajar crawl space cover. Now I'm here alone wondering if we overreacted or what the fuck exactly happened. Somebody or something moved that lid, door, cover, whatever you want to call it. It wasn't bumped or hit by myself or my wife, and my child is not able to get anywhere near that access point. The creepiest part / thing that bothers me the most is, I don't know if it was moved from inside the attic or from my closet below. Police said the drywall that connects up there wasn't broken or cut up. Again, I live in a condo with neighbors on both sides. There was no signs of a disturbed fiberglass near the entry or around my closet, so no one was obviously crawling around or messing shit up at least. I'm seriously thinking about someone placing a lock on the entry point, but I'm not good with that kind of handiwork, and wouldn't even know how to begin cutting or making a sturdier lid, or access, to even try to put a lock on one. It's a shame. I know this might not be considered paranormal to most, but I had a dream about a similar situation a couple weeks or a month or so ago. In my dream, a woman called me seemingly on a random day and said bluntly, "Is there someone inside your house?" I panicked and rushed everyone in my house out the door. I had my wife out in front of my kid, but I also had other family members over that day. So not exactly the same situation, and I can't remember if we found anyone or anything. But it's been a strange night to say the least. Thanks for reading, and any advice to my situation would be greatly appreciated. I would throw a lock on that thing just to make yourself feel better. My doppelganger. When I was younger in elementary school, I used to stay home a lot. I was a troubled kid who used to get sick or fake sick a lot, just so I didn't have to go to school. I also used to live with my grandmother because my mom and dad were going through a divorce. Her house was kind of off, and things used to happen all the time. I used to see things and hear children's giggles right behind me. One day for once, I actually went to school, and when I came home I heard this story. My grandmother walked up to my mom, who was sitting in the living room, and asked, "Why didn't Seacatsnek go to school?" And my mom, confused, told her, she did. My grandmother told her that she saw me in my room, with my back turned to the door, and I was brushing my hair. She said I was wearing the green Hollister shirt my stepsister gave me. They went back to check, and no one was there. She swore she saw me as clear as day. I've heard about doppelgangers before, but never thought about mine being so close. Seacatsnek is a weird name. But that was her name earlier in the story, in case that didn't make sense to you. Things disappear and reappear. Weird shit tends to happen to me. I went to North Carolina a few months ago to visit an online friend. We're cosplayers, and we planned to attend Comic-Con while I was visiting. So on the second day of con, my friend was dressed in a Demon Slayer cosplay. The cosplay came with a pair of earrings. During the drive, he complained that the earrings were starting to hurt and took them off in the middle of the console. Watched him do it. Con goes on, and he's doing a Demon Slayer photo shoot. Halfway through the shoot, he realizes he forgot his earrings in the car. So, he goes to grab them in the car. They're not in the middle console. He came back and grabbed me. We searched the car top to bottom. Keep in mind, we store everything we needed in the back seat. We never once opened the trunk. We didn't put anything back there. Well, on the off chance that they may have been there, we just opened it, and they were sitting neatly right next to each other, as if someone had primly sat them there. Primly. We were both a little freaked out. Now, the reason I mentioned this was because of what happened today. I lost my blue pair of Skull Candy headphones and searched high and low for them. I gave up and just decided to buy another pair of cheaper headphones. I figured if I found my blue headphones, then at least I could have an extra pair. Well, those disappeared too. Then today, when I was looking for those, I happened to glance over a place I already looked, remember looking, and saw my blue headphones. In a place I couldn't have easily found them, and wouldn't have found them. I brushed it off, sat on my chest. I brushed it off and sat down on my chest. This is important, in parentheses, where I had already looked for my cheaper pair of headphones. Note, I had already looked there multiple times for the cheaper pair. When I came home, my boyfriend told me that he found my cheaper pair. They were sitting on the goddamn chest where I had sat down and also looked around thoroughly. He promised me he didn't even move them. He didn't move them because he wanted me to see exactly where he found them. He promised me with the most serious look that he definitely wasn't messing with me. He's extremely sincere and wouldn't lie, so what the hell? Even if he was, stuff like this happens all the time, and it's happened for years before we dated. Things disappearing and reappearing. I don't feel like there's a ghost in here. I've never felt, heard, or saw anything. Well, there is this one weird thing. I occasionally smell something like bad breath in my room, like some real dank breath, and it comes and goes. I watched my mom read while I was asleep. Of all of the things I've ever experienced, this is the most unexplainable. My first ever sleep paralysis dream was when I was a teenager. I lived in a very small house with my mom and brother. and we all shared a room. My brother and I shared a bed on one side of the room. It was a pretty small room, and my mother slept in a twin bed on the other. I fell asleep, and when I woke up, quote unquote, it was broad daylight. My brother was gone, and I was in the same position I'd fallen asleep in. I was sideways on my bed, facing my mother's bed, and propped up. It felt like someone had their arms around me from behind, but I couldn't see who they were. My mom was on her bed in different clothes than the one she'd fallen asleep in. She was on her stomach and reading a book. I tried to call out for her, but I couldn't move or speak. I was scared because I couldn't move, but I didn't feel that whatever was holding me was dangerous or threatening. Just that they were holding me up. Went on for at least 10 minutes. I screamed in my head and tried to get her to hear me. Nothing worked. I started praying. Then I woke up. When I woke up, I was expecting to be sideways like I was in my dream. But instead, I woke up in the same position I fell asleep in. My mom, however, was exactly where she was in my dream, down to the closed book and laying on her stomach. I still freaking out. I asked her what the hell she did waking me up, or why she didn't hear me calling for her. She looked at me confused and told me that I was asleep and she didn't even hear me sleep talking, let alone calling out to her. That was my first sleep paralysis dream, and the rest that followed were more normal. It happened at night. I would see dark, shadowy figures and I couldn't move. Most were normal except for one where I was carried from one room to the next by an unseen figure. I don't have them anymore, but I still have issues sleeping, like waking up 5 or 6 times in the middle of the night for no reason. I take meds now, and I mostly stay asleep, except for every now and then when I wake up and go back to nightmares or just for no reason. But if I miss a night, I go right back to waking up 6 or 7 times. Since I got with my boyfriend, with history of paranormal history, I think I brought something home. Me, a 17-year-old female, recently started dating my boyfriend, 19, like 5 months ago. But we've been talking for about a year. We're so attached to each other and have such a healthy relationship. The scary part is the relationship is fine. It's what me and him have heard and seen which scares me even more, because he was there to be as spooked with me. Okay. He has told me that he has suspected his house has spirits. He has cats and he had a dog who passed it a long time ago. And when we stayed at his house, it was never more than just a door opening on its own. The spirit never felt negative. You can tell you weren't alone. My boyfriend isn't a solid believer until stuff happened to him. And when I tried to talk to him about any of the scary stuff, he'll just tear up a little bit and dismiss the topic. Tear up. He also had a dad with a bunch of money. So he owns and rents a couple of houses or whatever. My boyfriend's dad's renting a house in Gettysburg, very known for its haunting and deep history. And he had spoken about his family seeing things at this house and having seen shadows. Things lift on their own, which was unexplainable. His mom and brother started to believe in paranormal activity because of how intense that energy is. My boyfriend brought me to the house once. Well, we drove past it some time ago in the relationship, because he told me about how you'll never feel alone when we drove past. We live a little drive. We just drove past a big house, a shed, and a cornfield. They said they see things, but they didn't think that the entity is technically evil, but you can tell that they have seen shit. His dad is an electrical engineer, who even said that he gets the fucking spooks. Never feels alone. has maybe seen shit and heard things, and they're just so passionate about. I did feel creeps driving and getting close to that area. I trust my gut, and passing that house and area, we didn't feel good. I remember looking at my boyfriend, and he looked so pale. I don't know if he saw something or just as scared as me, especially knowing his history with this. But the scariest stuff happens at my house. I honestly don't know if I could have attracted or brought something towards me. There's been 3 solid events at my house, and they are all creepy as fuck. Like I said, my boyfriend avoids talking about it because he gets so creeped out because we have no explanation for these things. Event 1. Hearing knocking and going to check. We were watching Hulu and my boyfriend and I distinctly heard knocking. It was so scary because at this time I was telling him that I was seeing doors open at his house. But now at mine, this shit happened. And what scares us the most is how unhuman the knock sounded. He got up and was like, "You want me to check on that?" We were so creeped. I was, especially because after 3 lifeless knocks, we heard on my door, there was nobody else awake, and me showing him that fucked him up. The second and third event, my bong breaking, but from nothing. Me and my boyfriend smoke. We're just kids, but what I never would have expected is to see my bong literally break twice with 0 contact at all. First time we were just playing the video game and we saw the part of my bowl literally break, like it's a pure glass 200 bong. I bought and have never had issues with it up until now. And even then it happened so close together, the second time scared my boyfriend the most, because he saw firsthand what I'd been afraid of. My stuffed animal Lily is my baby, childhood toy, and my boyfriend loves her. So, when she's falling off my bed, he went to catch her, and when I look over, I heard and saw the glass snap in half, while my bear was in his hand, far from the bong. We were awestruck. The 2 bong incidents were like a week between each other. Because we go between my house and his, he looked so scared. I freaked out knowing nothing has made 0 contact with the bong for it to break, and we witnessed that and inspected the area multiple times for what could have done that. I'm just so creeped. I'm going to update. Feel free to ask questions. I'm very spiritual, and I do believe lived in God and spirits, my boyfriend too. House is calling to me. There's a house that was built in 1880, 4 minutes from my current apartment. I didn't know about it. I've been thinking about buying land and modifying shipping container. So at least I have a cheap home to live in without worrying about the landlord. So I Googled land for sale in my area, and this house popped up with about 1.5 acres of land. The problem is, the house has been clearly abandoned, which is why the house is listed for 30 grand. Now, I don't have enough for a deposit, nor do I know anything about fixing old homes, or really any home, but I decided for some reason to call the realtor selling the property, to which the realtor said that the house is an eyesore. She can't wait for the home to be knocked down. I don't know what it is about this property. I truly do believe it could be absolutely beautiful just given the chance, but I also know, but I also understand I would have to have a building inspector look at the property and see if the home is structurally stable. That much for sure I do know. But it's like, I cannot stop thinking about this house. I don't understand it. I've driven by the property at least 5 times. Since the photos online weren't that good and the realtor didn't have updated photos, each time the house has felt open and kind of lonely again. I cannot explain this. I tend to pick up on energies of people and places. I want to drive to that house today to check it out again. I just felt compelled for some reason. I felt the house's energy before I got there. I was about 2.5 miles from the home. It felt sad, desolate, lonely, exposed, and just like a whirlpool of different emotions. Has anyone else had this happen? What does that mean? I want to emphasize that even though I pick up on the energy of places, I do not actively look for things like this at best. I try to leave it alone, but I can't stop thinking about this house. I don't know anything about it other than it's been abandoned for 10 years. It needs work, and the home was built in 1880. I don't know, sir, but from time to time I felt like that house. My mom transferred shadow people onto me and my siblings. So this started all the way back with my grandpa. My mother tells me that my grandpa sleep-talked one day in a language that no one understood. When asked about what he dreamt about, he responded with, "I talked to 3 shadow people," but he couldn't remember what they were even talking about. Soon after, my mother saw 3 shadow people in her dreams as well. However, she never told me if they were talking to her or not. Further, she explained that with each child she had, one of the figures disappeared from her dreams. First my brother, then my sister, and lastly, me. 3 shadow people for 3 children. I saw shadowy figures when I was around 10, and that lasted for around 4 years. I can only really remember one instance where it truly scared me. I was lying in bed trying to sleep when I felt a presence in my room looming right above me. When I opened my eyes, I could see a tall and lanky, misty figure in the corner of my eye standing over me. Before, they would kind of only show up in the corner of my eye at random times in the day or night. It never came that close to me before. I could never draw that sort of connection, as mine seemed to show up randomly. Then when I talked about it to my mom the next morning, she told me not to be scared of it. She told me that my siblings see the same figures. My brother was really freaked out by his, but my sister said that they serve as some kind of protector. She explained that hers always showed up when something bad is about to happen. And the bigger the figure, the more intense the bad thing. I haven't seen my figure since that night, and my mother's never seen any of the 3 after she gave birth to us. I have no idea about my brother or sister. To this day, I don't know where mine went or why I can't see it anymore. Me and my friend encountered something, and I need an explanation. A few years ago, me, Shane, and my friend Aaron are walking to his house from football training. This is Ireland, so GAA. I was kind of getting towards sundown, but anyway, his house is about 3 miles outside the village where we're from. About a mile down the road towards his house is another house called the Laragh House. Laragh. It's an old place, and you always hear stories of dogs not walking past and so on and so forth. Locals in the pub telling weird stories about the place. Maybe that it would light up, maybe they'd hear screams coming from it, but you always hear those stories, especially in Ireland. It was Sunday during the summer, and like I said, getting towards sundown. We go past the house and around the corner where there's another straight for maybe 50 meters. We're on the left, and on the right is what looked like a nice young girl, maybe our age, 18. She looks kind of Spanish, dark hair, and very pretty. We notice that she's wearing a dress that kind of looks really old. Lace and just something girls ain't wearing around here. Also, it's strange, but it's like a black and white filter on just her. Erin, being the more outgoing of us, says hi. She never answers, just stays walking ahead toward the house, which is around the bend that we just turned. He says hello again, and she just turns her head and stares at us for a second with black eyes. Writing this, I'm getting chills everywhere. She stares back straight and goes around the bend. Erin looks at me in shock and says, I'll run around the bend and check to try to talk to her or something. I sprint around the corner and there's no one there. She couldn't have gone more than 10 meters, and it's a long straight. I come back and he says, well? I say no one's there. Without a word, we sprinted the rest away to his house and just told his parents. What the hell was this? We still talk about it to this day. I encountered an otherworldly being. I went on this hike as a spiritual journey in Denver, Colorado. I was there to attend the PS 2023 conference. I decided to hike alone and wander around the Rocky Mountains. I took some mushrooms and planned on some weed later on, too. The hike was amazing, and I got so many beautiful pictures. I was hiking for hours before I started heading down towards a pond that a sign pointed to. It was a lot more walking than I thought, and being under the influence with night approaching, I began to worry. I pressed on and found my desired location, and was rewarded with one of the most beautiful views I'd ever seen. It wasn't long after I arrived that I strangely heard a name being called. It was my brother and his girlfriend on the top of the cliff. They somehow found me. They didn't even come with me to this location, although they did know I was there, roughly. We talked for a bit and I felt reassured that I was safe. So I decided to smoke the weed that I had. I did a dance to honor the spirits that guided my journey. As I was leaving, I decided to take one last photo with my phone. I pointed it at my brother and his girlfriend on the cliff and took it. After I saw the picture, I zoomed in because I was curious what it would look like, and I saw an eye-looking shape. I had a feeling that a being of overwhelming power was watching me. And when I looked up from my phone, I saw those eyes and the trees and the sky all around me. I started walking and words filled my head. Don't doubt the power, it kept repeating. My footsteps grew heavy and I began feeling like my heart might give out. I stopped and sat on the rock not far from where I took the picture. I looked up and I saw the moon between two evergreen trees. I asked the moon for protection and performed a makeshift ritual, as I believed it might help if I asked the moon to use me as her tool to aid myself and humanity. I actually felt the moon take control of my body, and I entered a trance, but I got too scared and broke out of it. It was wild. I met up with my brother after waiting on a different rock near the car, and I got deja vu. But it was different. I saw an alternate reality of sorts where I died in that moment, but it was more like I remembered I died at that moment. My heart hurt the rest of the night, and sometimes I still get pain. I've gone to the doctor about it, but they say I'm fine. What do you guys think of this? I haven't had anything bad happen to me so far, and since then, I feel like I'm in good standing with all the forces I interact with. Nothing really changed since then. I know it's easy to write this off as a psychedelic illusion with a weird picture artifact, but I'm not sure I personally can do that. That all felt so purposeful. I have no doubt that if I had been sober, this might not have happened the way it did. But my purpose on this walk was to grow spiritually. I paid respects, I danced wildly, I asked for guidance, and at the very end I saw it. We know very little about psychedelics in humans, They've been using him to communicate with otherworldly beings since the shamans. Maybe even before then. I might be crazy, but I just wanted to share this with someone. Shadow people helping me. Firstly, I'd like to clarify that I've always had sleep paralysis as a kid, so I know the difference between sleep paralysis and hallucinations, and realistic dreams and reality. I just want to make sense of what happened to me. The house I live in is actively haunted sometimes, and everyone shares a different story. But in this post, I'll be talking about two that stood out to me. Keep in mind that in both scenarios, I slept with all my lights off, so it was either completely dark or very minimal illumination from outside my computer or keyboard. 1. I used to date someone whom I suspect was a sociopath. He lied about his ex having cancer and dying, although she was still alive just away for college. Before I had any suspicions of this, one night he slept over and it was completely dark in my room, except from the moonlight peeking through the windows. I woke up in a sleep paralysis, and at the foot of my bed was a shadow figure whose body was outlined by the moonlight. It was pointing at the guy and saying, "Get away," repeatedly. I woke up and shrugged it off, spooked, but I brushed it off and found out 3 days later that his girlfriend was alive. For all those wondering, yeah, I got away. Fast forward a year, got rid of my old bed and switched to a bunk bed so I can have a desktop set up in my room. 2. I woke up one night randomly. I don't know if it was because my body sensed something in my room or if it was my cat, but I sat up to pet my cat, and in the corner of my eye it looked like a shadow person standing in the corner of the room watching me and my cat. I immediately started rationalizing it, pinching myself, rubbing my eyes, telling myself it's a shadow from the stuff on my desk in front of my keyboard. But the outline of the shadow person was way too sharp for being that far away from my keyboard, and my ladder certainly couldn't have made that figure. It was shaped like a person. Strangely enough, this was also when I had someone sleeping over. This time it was my girlfriend. I kept on looking at it and then back at my friend, but I was too scared to wake her up because I didn't want its presence to be confirmed or have her freak out. My cat wasn't scared and was looking at it too, so I just pretended I didn't notice it and forced myself to go back to sleep. I'm no longer friends with said girl anymore. Nothing bad happened, but she's in a bad relationship and it just started to affect me. Needless to say, I do not sleep in the complete dark anymore. I also used to be super spiritual. I practiced tarot cards, lit certain candles during certain full moon phases. But it was all harmless and a way for me to deal with trauma. Since the first experience, I haven't touched my occult items. Does anyone have any knowledge or experience on shadow people warning you about people specifically? Something that happened before I was born. So my mom is seriously mentally ill and does genuinely hallucinate. Some of the stuff I've seen too, or at least seen enough evidence of where I think sometimes she genuinely does see things. I've wondered. So to keep it brief, I ended up going through years of child abuse and suicide attempts starting as a young kid after I was born. I was wanted very much though. I was the miracle baby that came out of fertility issues, ironically enough. When my mom was pregnant with me, she went to sleep one night and woke up with an odd sensation something was wrong. There was a tall figure standing over the foot of her bed with a long, dark robe. She couldn't see the face. She oddly didn't feel afraid, just watched as it pointed at her, and then at me, still in the womb. It went away after a minute. She still doesn't know why she wasn't scared, but knew inside it was something to do with me. I'm curious as to what people have to say on that. Throughout my whole life, I've seen so much death and so much trauma. I've always been into darker things as well. I've escaped my old home now and actually embraced my weird interests. I collect old antiques. I love gothic horror. And I've been linked with the darker art and interests. I model for artwork, and I'm usually painted in something intense or supernatural. I express my life experiences through my art and life. Oddly, death has become a part of my life, and it's a part of what has made me get as far as I have with my work. People associate me with it artistically, but on a philosophical way that fascinates people. I always wondered if this was connected to what my mother saw. Is this happening to anybody else? For the past 2 nights in a row, something very strange has been happening to me. I'm going to try to explain it the best that I can. I usually always sleep on my left side, which puts me facing the wall with my back to the rest of my room. Now, I usually have no problem doing this as it's the main way I sleep, but for some reason starting 2 nights ago, I just can't. When I'm facing the wall, I get this really strange feeling that something's behind me, which makes me sleep on my right side facing my room with my back to the wall. I must be rolling over in my sleep because I wake up facing the wall again. Okay, now for the strange part. Now this is hard to explain, but please bear with me. 2 nights ago I was asleep. I was not dreaming, but I was asleep. It was like 4 in the morning, and I got this awful feeling that someone was standing behind me. I'm facing the wall at this point, and then I swear I heard a man whispering. I couldn't make out a word that he was saying, but I could hear it. I hadn't felt so scared in a long time. I kept trying to make myself move, but I couldn't. It felt as though I was pushing myself to the point that I thought I was going to hit the wall next to me. Finally, my body gets up and I scan the room and nothing's there. It happened again last night. There was no whispering this time, but I got the same awful feeling and I just kept hearing in my head, "Something's behind you, something's behind you, something's behind you," over and over. Again, it was a struggle to move my body, and finally I got up and once again I scanned my room, and nothing was there. I'm currently living with my mom and she believes in ghosts. So the first night this happened to me, I told her. She believed me and was just like, "Yep, that's creepy." I went to tell her this morning that it happened again, but when I saw her, she told me that it happened to her last night too. She said, "It felt like something was standing over me, but I couldn't open my eyes." Has this happened to anybody here? What's going on? I really don't want this to happen again tonight. Looking for advice. I used to have bad sleep paralysis when I was an adolescent, which I managed to stop after a confrontation from ages 7 to 9 or maybe 10. But since then, I had no significant dreams until around maybe 13, which I had a dream where I was able to control it first, and currently still is the only dream I've had where I could control it, even though the control only lasted about a minute. But recently, I'm now 24, I had this dream where I wasn't able to wake myself up. I always am able to wake myself up by moving my toes, fingers, or calling to Santa Muerte. This didn't work this time. It wasn't like the other times. It's like my arms and legs were able to move in my head. That isn't a typo. I was able to move one arm, but my other arm, which is on my chest, was stuck by some intense pressure. There is always a shadow on my torso near my abdomen with a defined face. Despite being a show, you could tell the face's jaw and cheeks and shaped head, while other was chest near without any features, just black. Then I heard a female voice in a British accent say a couple of lines which I could make out, but I heard one chance or something along those lines. That was a couple of days ago. I then had another dream yesterday which was short and just had the same paralysis thing where I could move my arms and legs, but it was like my chest was locked to the bed. What was chasing my sheep last night? I had an experience last night. My sister and I were out on the back porch with the dogs when our sheep, which we keep in the yard right next to the dogs, started running around like they were being chased. I thought maybe our herding dog, who we keep in the barn about a half-mile down the road, had gotten down here somehow and was bothering them. So I turned on my phone's flashlight. The sheep were huddled in the corner near the dogs at this point. I didn't see anything. After waiting a few minutes, the quote-unquote dog didn't start chasing them again, so I turned off my flashlight. A bit after I did, they started running again, so I turned my light back on and again saw nothing. Turned it back off and they ran back to their original corner. This continued for a bit until one time when my light was off and I saw a curly black dog's tail silhouetted against our white truck. Aha! Problem solved. It's exactly what a herd dog's tail looks like. So obviously it's her. At this point I turned my light back on. Didn't see her, and I kept it on. I called her name and she didn't come, which was a bit weird. She's a very obedient dog, even if she does get excited and overheard the sheep. I keep calling her name, and then eventually the sheep ran from the corner that they were in and across the yard again. I hadn't seen the dogs scare them, but whatever, they were near the edge of the yard where a relatively small border collie could easily hide in the shadows. The sheep kept running to and from different corners as if being spooked, and I just kept, perhaps, quote-unquote, just missing the dog getting to where they would be scaring them in the direction that they were running. Actual weird stuff. Then it started getting a little weird. The sheep ran back to the corner near the dog yard, and this time I saw a black llama shape. Again, partially silhouetted by the car, or I thought I saw the dog's tail earlier. We have a black baby llama in that yard, so I thought, oh, she's chasing the sheep. She's always been very friendly with the sheep and calm, unlike our grown llama who is not in the yard. But maybe she learned from the adult. But then, this is the unexplainable part. The sheep ran from that, again, fully illuminated corner they were in. I didn't see the llama do anything to scare them. In fact, I can't see her anymore, but okay. But then the sheep ran from their new corner as if the llama chased them from there too, when there is no way she could have gotten to that corner without me seeing her. Llamas are big. At this point, I can clearly hear the llama's hoofbeats, and I have no idea how I ever thought it was a dog chasing them, but this is hilarious. Our sweet llama fucking terrorizing the sheep in the middle of the night. So I pull out my camera and I record. I can't see the llama on the screen at all, but she's all black, so I guess the phone just isn't picking her up even with the flash. The sheep keep running across the same stretch of grassy area, presumably chased by the llama. I can't see her chasing them, which is odd, since she's so big, but that side of the yard's darker, so I'm probably just overlooking her. But then, the sheep ran again, and this time directly across the completely clear area and into the corner where there's just dirt. It's great. Even if it was a fucking squirrel chasing them, I'll be able to see it this time. But then they run from that corner, and I see absolutely no other animal. Definitely not the llama, Not even a raccoon. Nothing could have gotten in that corner to scare them back without me seeing it. Plus, now that I'm looking around the yard to see what I missed, I see the llamas in the very back. There's a small chute that leads to more of the yard, which the sheep never went into. I would have seen the llama leave. What the fuck? Then after the sheep stop in a new corner, I hear hoofbeats. These hoofbeats are loud, hella loud, and fast. They sound like a horse galloping. At this point, I freak out because there's no way a horse got in there, and I didn't see it. Both of our horses are red, unlike the dog and the llama. So that's it. No way am I doing this. I go inside the house and bring the dogs with me. Don't go back out the rest of the night. I went down to the barn this morning, and the horses and the dogs were all in there. No holes in the fences. No way they could have gotten out and back in. Now, these are very calm sheep. We specifically have them down here instead of at the barn because they won't get spooked by the dogs. They're the old sheep. They're not prone to getting spooked or running around for no reason, and in fact, are quite lazy. Again, old. The place they were running from made it clear that whatever was chasing them was in the yard, not outside of it. Sometimes they would run from the center of the yard. The yard they're in, it's small, the size of a suburban home's backyard. My flashlight illuminated everywhere they ran except for the very edges, which again weren't the only places they were running from. We have a new strong fence keeping them in that wild animals can't get through unless it's very small, like a squirrel or a lizard or a raccoon or a gecko, or literally broke the fence down. It's not broken down, and the animal that I saw and heard at the end was clearly larger than even the sheep. It looked the size of our grown llama who's not in that yard. It sounded like one of our horses galloping. My house is haunted? ? I'm a skeptic, and a really big one. So when I say this freaked me out like no other, I'm telling the truth. I'm a late night kind of person. I was already watching ghost stories and stuff like that. Even if I'm a skeptic, it freaks me out, don't know why. But anyways, I went to brush my teeth at around 3:30 in the morning. I thought to myself, would be kind of weird if something happened right about now. My bathroom has a weird setup. So the first door leads to the sink and mirror, then another door leads to the bath and toilet. The toilet has a door right next to it too, and that leads to the master bedroom. And right after I thought about something weird happening, I heard a small bang. I can't really describe it, but I look over and a dress that's hanging on the door to the master bedroom was swinging, as if somebody had touched it. Okay, it's a little weird, but then the door slowly opened and it was fully closed. That door takes a considerable amount of pressure to open. It doesn't latch properly, but either way it would take a human force to open it. When that happened, I no joke said, "Nope, fuck that." I said that out loud, and I closed the door leading to that room, and I saw the door open. Now my girlfriend's grandmother died in the hallway leading to where I was standing at, in the sink, and we found her. I'm not really sure if that would have any connection, though. A couple of months prior, I also had another weird event happen, where my girlfriend and I were sitting in our room, and her diploma was sitting on her dresser, standing up for months. Then, all of a sudden, it just fell over. It was weird, but I thought something might explain it away, but what happened in that bathroom is what really makes me think about my skepticism. I checked for anything that could cause that dress and door to open, but couldn't find anything. Weird experience. For some context, I live in farm country, USA. I have for almost 10 years. I regularly have to go outside in the pitch black with just a flashlight to check on animals and weird noises. I don't scare easily being outside at night because my attention and calmness is essential for keeping my animals and myself safe. I have neighbors, but they're driving distance away, or you would definitely see them coming if they walked. No one would sneak up on someone at night out here for obvious reasons. So this is what happened. I was outside on Halloween night around 10:30 p.m. I was outside with my dog checking animals and letting her potty before bed. We were about 6 yards from my house and I hear a hoot, hoot, hoot. I instantly was covered in goosebumps and the hair on my arms stood up. It sounded like a human hooting like an owl. Didn't even have reverb or natural range of a normal owl. I stopped walking and looked around thinking it's Halloween and it's probably my husband messing with me. I don't see anything outside. I look at my phone and it doesn't show that a door or window is open for my husband to be making that noise. I'm on guard but keep walking with my dog. I then hear hoot, hoot, hoot again. I look around with my flashlight, looking for eyes or a person or something. Nothing. It was pretty bright outside from the moon, so I should have been able to see an owl, especially because we don't really have trees. We have a few structures where an owl could perch, but it would have to be perched on the top of one of these structures. I'm more anxious now, and I start to turn heading back to the house. My dog and I get about halfway to the house, and I hear hoot, hoot, hoot again. For whatever reason, I go into a full panic, and I hurry inside. I look through the doors, and I go to my bedroom, and I ask my husband if he's messing with me. He's dead asleep, already snoring. I checked all the cameras around our property, don't see anything. But I spent the rest of the night on edge thinking somebody was going to break in. I wouldn't think anything of this except my body went into full alert mode when I first heard the hoots. We have a few packs of coyotes that live around us, and I'm very often outside when they start howling at each other. I'm also a long-distance runner, and run these country roads every day, miles from anybody. And I run into all sorts of animals. I don't panic or react the way that I did from the sound of an owl. Or that owl. That's what makes me think this might be a paranormal experience of some sort. Has anyone ever heard something like this? What happened to me? Paranormal encounter. When I was a freshman in college, I lived in a notoriously haunted dorm that was basically a repurposed apartment building that was around 100 years old. One night after I laid down and closed my eyes to sleep, I was suddenly bombarded by black and white off-colored images that were most definitely somebody else's memories. One I distinctly remember. It was a young boy with swim goggles and pool floaties laughing and looking up at me. There was also this weird surge of energy. I felt specifically this in my ears. Then I was suddenly in my dorm room, but it looked entirely different to the way I had it, and there was a portrait of a man that seemed to come alive and look back at me. I was so overwhelmed. And then when I opened my eyes, the man was standing over me at my bedside. He was hazy and transparent, and then I physically felt and saw his energy flow into me, and it felt like I was being electrocuted. But in a good way. There was no pain, just energy, a lot of it. I was so scared for a full minute I thought I was possessed. Can someone explain to me what the hell happened? And for context, I come from a long line of female fortune tellers and the spiritually sensitive, both of which I don't consider myself to be, but I've never really experienced anything on this level before. I would ask someone from your family in that case. The Hat Man. This happened to me when I was 8, but I still remember it vividly. I was in Denver staying at a hotel with my sister, my brother, and my parents. This hotel room was a little odd. It was separated into 2 rooms by a wall and a door. One of the rooms had 2 beds and the other room had a couch and a TV, almost like a living room. The room with beds had no doors, besides the one that separates the living room and the room itself. The living room was where you enter the hotel room itself. The living room was also where the bathroom was located. So our second day staying there, my parents went somewhere, leaving my brother, my sister, and myself alone there. My brother went to go use the restroom, and me and my sister were watching TV in the room that had the beds in it. The door that separated the 2 rooms was open all the way, so you could see the living room and the entrance to the hotel room itself. While we were watching TV, this big burst of light came from the entrance, and the sound of it opening. And out emerges, I would say, about a 6'5" man coming out of it. He was nothing but pure darkness, no light reflected off of him, just pitch black. He wore what appeared to be a trench coat and a fedora. He also carried a briefcase. I could not distinguish any other features besides this. He turned his head toward me and my sister for about 5 seconds before turning away. He walked a couple more feet before disappearing instantly, along with that bright light that was emitting from the entrance. After he disappeared, me and my little sister started crying and started screaming for my brother. A couple of years later, I looked it up and found other people had a similar experience, but saw that thing while in sleep paralysis. Unlike that, me and my sister were awake when that happened. Entity that manifested as a fear. This story goes back to when I was 10 years old. I was home alone during the summer at night. To kind of explain the setup of my home to paint a better picture, we had a family computer that sat in our living room. From this point of view where the computer sits, you can see the kitchen to the right and a glass sliding door that leads into the backyard on your left. I don't exactly recall the time, but it was really dark out. My parents were out for the evening. Like most 10-year-olds at the time, I enjoyed playing computer games like Club Penguin in my free time. So there I was playing Club Penguin when I heard a loud pop. It was about as loud as a balloon pop. I looked to my left where the glass sliding door is, and right pressed up against it, I see a clown. At the time, I used to have a really big fear of them, like huge. This freaked me out big time, but as soon as it appeared, it disappeared, and it turned into a white mist of some sort. I remember sprinting to my parents' room and just waiting for them to be home. I never said a word to them about it, at least when it happened, because I had a good feeling they wouldn't believe me. Fast forward a few months later after the first encounter, and it happened again. I was at the computer, and it came as fast as it left. I'd forgotten all about this experience like I mentioned earlier, and I haven't had any experience like that ever again. Looking back, though, I think it could have been an entity of some sort disguised as a fear of mine. Or maybe an overactive imagination, who knows. Open to hearing theories. That's the end of them. See you later.